Yay Networks.
Most people are not aware that low exposure to sunlight can increase your risk for diabetes. It's so interesting how increasing your exposure to sunlight boosts mood, decreases cravings, decreases hunger, and just overall improves your health and well-being.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. In this week's episode of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, we are talking about light, and it is the dreaded time change has just happened, and our days are getting shorter and shorter. And we may think, okay, well, I might need to bump up my vitamin D, but there's so much more to it beyond just our vitamin D. There's so much that light plays a role in our whole body wellness. I am joined today by Dr. Whitney Hardy, and Dr. Hardy is a family practice physician with Ochsner Health over at Ochsner West Bank. She got her medical degree from Louisiana State University, did her residency at Lake Charles Memorial Hospital. She also has her master's in health administration from George Washington University. Her practice involves patients of all ages, so sports medicine to women's health to wellness-focused preventative medicine. So something like working with patients on optimizing vitamin D, strategizing how to optimize our light, our sunlight, something that might seem like a really small thing. Those are all things that she is working with her patients. She is a solid supporter of wellness throughout our community. She's constantly engaging with people through health fairs, community outreach presentations, foreign missions. So welcome, Dr. Hardy. I'm going to stop there because I've got to ask you, tell me a little bit about the foreign missions you've done.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And I have done several trips to a small area in Honduras with a Methodist church from my hometown of Lake Charles, Louisiana. We host a clinic there for 1 week where we do screenings and just give good all-around care.
That's really cool. So I actually went to Honduras for my last year of school. I was finishing my food science degree. And I had 3 credit hours left. And it was, May. I wanted to graduate at the end of the semester. 3 credit hours left. And the food science, one of the professors said, well, if there's this trip to Honduras, and if you decide on a project that you want to do, you can use, a 3-week trip to Honduras to do your 3 credit hours. And I thought, there's no way I can afford that. But my dad was like, well, that's such a great opportunity. Let's figure out how we'll do this. And so I was fortunate to be able to see and experience it. And it's life-changing.
Absolutely. I feel like, just as much as we teach people there, that we learn so much, just that type of medicine, that type of practice is totally different from what I trained in, but it's such a great experience. I would not regret it, and I can't wait until I can do it again.
And the things that we take for granted and the perspective that it gives us when we come back, it's been a couple of decades since I did go there and spent the time in the areas that I did for this food science project. And there's still things that resonate with me now when I hear maybe a conversation that I think, oh man, it does still resonate with me that, there's so much that we think is a hardship that is like far from it. You also, you do so much with work, but you do have hobbies that you're feeling in that little spare time that you do have. You teach indoor cycling classes, which is cool. You practice meditation, and you're writing a science fiction novel.
Yes, I am. I am a complete nerd in that aspect. Have been for a long time. Love Isaac Asimov and Michael Crichton, and so I am trying to dip my toe in those waters. We've got everything from alien fights, visiting other planets. It's going to be great when it comes out.
That's really good. How far into it are you?
I am halfway. and it should be a trilogy. So plenty of work for me.
Halfway through your first book?
Yes.
I'm laughing because like if someone's like in a meeting with Dr. Hardy and they're like, you're kind of like, how sometimes people get quiet and you're like, I wonder what they're thinking about. You're like, you're writing your science fiction novel, perhaps.
That could be an accurate assumption, yeah. Or perhaps they remind me of a character
right.
where I'm like, this would be really great to
that's
my book.
That's awesome. So what we're here for today, of course, is talking about the benefits of daylight and sunlight, and just what the heck do we do right now with this, daylight savings time when our days get so short? For me personally, I don't like it at all.
Yeah, it is definitely an adjustment. And I feel like it kind of sneaks up on you because you almost don't even realize that the change has happened. And that first week, you're wondering, why do I feel so sluggish? And, why is my body just not catching up? And, I think that we really don't realize how, as human beings, we're just wired to, be more active when there's bright light and then, go to sleep whenever it gets dark. So that time change can really do a number on us.
It's really interesting how we're not, I think, totally tuned in with the cues that light gives us. I saw my sister-in-law had shared something on social and it said something like, it was one of these kind of memes, and it said, am I the only one whose life is ruined because it's completely dark at 5 p.m.? And I thought, it's obviously a dramatic statement, but I was like, yes, I completely get it. There is the benefit that it does get daylight earlier, of course, but for a lot of people, they might not be up and out in that daylight at 6 a.m. And so the problem for some people is that, they may wake up, they just get in the car, go straight to work, especially if they're just driving to go to the parking garage. By the time you leave, it's dark. And if you haven't left your office all day and you don't have a window, it's highly likely that you haven't had any direct contact with sunlight through the day. On the flip side, I was thinking about kind of how it affects us so much. And a few years ago, we were really fortunate enough to go to Paris, and it happened to be Paris it was either very late June or very late May, early June. And I've never experienced this, but it was kind of like how our days are long in summertime. Like it gets dark at 8 p.m. or a little bit after 8 p.m. And so kids, we all can be outside, through 8 o'clock. At that time that we happened to be there, it was daylight past 11 p.m. And
wow.
It was crazy. But what was so fascinating as I was thinking about what you and I are going to be talking about today is while we were there, you would be out having dinner, of course, like sitting outside, all these things. And you would normally by 11 o'clock, I am like fast asleep or really wishing I were, like whatever I'm doing, I wish it was wrapping up because I'm exhausted. But there, you wouldn't even realize it. You would think and feel the energy felt like it was 7 p.m. And then all of a sudden you would realize, wow, it's 11 p.m. Again, the cues that our energy, our mood, our spirit is getting from the daylight, we're really unaware of it, but it's so impactful to us.
Yeah, that sounds like something that most of us would love to get the chance to experience, but
and even here, our summer hours giving us those longer days. I think, when we think about it and we think about this transition, and like you said, it kind of sneaks up on us, it isn't all in our head, or my sister-in-law's post about, that is ruining our life. But when we look at the influence of sun on our body, there's these multiple whole body benefits we talked about. So our mood, our energy, our sleep patterns, of course, not surprisingly, but even things like our appetite and our cravings, all of this is tied into sunlight. And so if we are deficient in sunlight, it can leave us feeling less than optimal. And we'll talk a little bit about D in a bit, but I think that's the first thing that people go to is, okay, well, let me think if I'm not getting the light that I need, I might need to supplement with D. But let's come back to it. If we can, let's talk a little bit about just light in general and how and why that's influencing us so strongly.
Sure. I think it just goes back to, the way that our bodies are wired, as human beings, the way our brains are designed to kind of take in light. We start making melatonin when it is dark, and we make serotonin, with that first onset of daylight. And serotonin is a chemical that can affect our mood. If you have low levels of that, you can get depression, anxiety. But the weird thing is that serotonin, that a lot of us don't think of, serotonin is a precursor for melatonin. So the minute your eyes open and you see the daylight, melatonin production stops, serotonin production begins. So that's how you can get into problems like seasonal affective disorder. When we're not seeing that light, we're in a building the whole time, and that serotonin production drops. And then all of a sudden, people can, just not feel like themselves throughout that winter season. The other flip side of it is, just like that morning light is important to tell your body it's time to wake up, it's important to shut off in the evening when it's time to go to sleep. And that's something that's kind of challenging for us in the digital age, because a lot of times, even if it's dark outside, let's say you work in a building with no windows. So you go home, you see that it's dark when you get in your car, you get into your house, you've got lights there, you've got a cell phone, you've got a computer, you've got a laptop, you've got your TV. You could be flooding your brain with light, which the brain doesn't really differentiate that it's artificial light.
And it's still that blue light that's stimulating.
Exactly. So you're still telling your brain it's time to stay up, which then you can't flip to the melatonin production and then go to sleep.
Let's take a minute to talk about Headspace, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. So you may have tried meditation before and it just didn't go so well, or maybe you just felt like you were doing it wrong. So if enhancing your mental well-being is part of your self-care plan, you're going to want to check out Headspace. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations and an easy-to-use app. It's one of the only meditation apps advancing the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. I love that Headspace is just so customizable for whatever we're dealing with right now. Whatever the situation, Headspace really can help us feel better. Headspace's approach to mindfulness can help to reduce our stress, improve our sleep, boost focus, and really just increase our overall sense of well-being on our schedule, anytime, anywhere. We all deserve to feel as happy as possible, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/fueled. That's headspace.com/fueled for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal offered right now. Head to headspace.com/fueled today. So there's a lot that we can do to but it takes a little bit of thinking to kind of get ourselves on a schedule. So one of the first things that I do when I wake up is open the curtains, because, if my husband's already awake, if he's not, I don't. But that's one of the first things, is letting this light in. The other is downstairs, I'll have my coffee outside, and especially, and now even early, the sunlight is starting to come up, opening the doors, getting outside. But even before I'm opening my eyes, one of the things that when we look at sleeping, I guess going back to, let's kind of start at the nighttime of how, because I think that's where so much goes wrong. And then it's hard to go right in the morning. So at night, getting your room as dark as possible for exactly the reasons you just said. And I think that that's really helpful to understand that light, it's stimulating that serotonin production, and we want the reverse. We want that melatonin production. So at night, we want your room dark. But before you even start to say, okay, my room's going to get dark, separating yourself from those electronic gadgets. I sound like our grandmother. Put the gadgets away.
Doodads or whatever. There's so many of them, right? And even if it's not necessarily work related, it could be scrolling through Facebook or Instagram. It's still telling your brain that it's time to wake up. And the hardest one that I find when I'm talking to my patients is the TV, because so many people use the TV to fall asleep, but your brain is taking in that blue light. So, a lot of our smart TVs have a sleep timer, and a helpful thing is to just set that TV timer to go off after a certain amount of time, and then you'll be in that complete darkness.
I interviewed a sleep expert for this podcast, and it was a 2-parter, and she's just so well-versed in all these strategies in sleep, which I'll be kind of sharing some of them as you and I are talking. It was fascinating because her husband sleeps with the TV on. And I was like, oh
Goodness.
my gosh. I was like, that's like, and she's like, I know. I was like, well, it kind of made us all feel a little bit human, that was like, okay, well, if
Right.
she struggles with this, we understand that a lot of times within couples or within families, there's different ways that people do this. So using your smart TV features, if you have one, we just have an old school TV. So I'm interested to know that they even have that you can set it for that timer to go off. One thing that I'm adamant about is sleeping with your smartphone not right by your bedside. And so someone said to me just yesterday, well, what about, my kids might call. So we're not talking about having it outside of your house. It can be even in your room, just not right by you. For me, I put it in our bathroom and it's right on the other side of the wall. So you can still hear it. I still use it as my alarm clock, but it does two things. At night, I'm not tempted to look at that if I saw an alert come through, for example, and I was looking to see what time it is. But also the last thing I'm doing before sleep, I'm not scrolling through the phone because it's plugged into the other room. And so now we immediately that's eliminating that artificial light right before sleep. So whether it's your TV, whether if it's your smartphone, find a way that at least 30 minutes before bedtime, you're separating from that artificial light. And then even starting to dim the lights in your house, starting to turn off some of those lights. Like those seem like very simple things, but they're really good cues. If your room isn't dark, my dad sleeps with a washcloth over his face, to kind of block the light out. I have an eye mask that I like to sleep with. Whatever it is that you've got. And I'll notice that when I do have that mask, I can sleep into when the sun is already up. Like on a weekend, if I wanted to sleep a little later, if I didn't have that mask on, as soon as that sun is up, I'm wide awake because of what you just said. My body is starting to respond and produce that serotonin.
Absolutely. Yeah, those tips are really great. And I mean, a good set of blackout curtains are helpful too.
Right. So set yourself up for success at night. In the morning, if you can, open the curtains, start to let that light in. If someone is, you have someone who's still sleeping, go in the other room, start getting those lights on, don't poke around in the dark the whole time. Like get your lights on. One of the things I do, and this isn't necessarily, it's not at all a light thing, but I find that this sort of, it helps with this wake up process and the alertness process. I splash like really cold water on my face, like first thing in the morning. And my husband asked the other day, he goes, why did you start doing that? Like, I'm not really washing it. It's just cold water. And I was like, I heard Al Roker talking about it, the weather guy, years ago. So I heard someone ask him, how do you wake up at 2 a.m. or whatever these like crazy early hours are? And he said, no matter what time I have to wake up, as soon as I splash that cold water on my face, it kind of just revs them up and wakes them up. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. So I do my Al Roker process. So, but that's, again, these are really simple things. Nothing we talked about is anything that is going to be a challenge. So getting the early morning hours of light if you can, and if you can, even better, get a little bit of movement outside in those early morning hours of light. There's some science supporting that getting your exercise in those early hours of sunlight can help later with appetite, with craving, with mood, with everything. So even if you're not going to get moving first thing in the morning, trying to get yourself exposed to that early light.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of data showing that early morning light can definitely help you sleep easier later on in the day. And the sooner you can be exposed to it, the better. But, even if you're just getting some morning activity in. And it also has health benefits for your heart health and your overall well-being.
Something that I think we underestimate all of this. So once you get to work, if you're lucky enough to have a window, like props to you. I don't. Do you have a window in your space?
I have a window in my office, but not my exam rooms.
Yeah. Which is where you are most of your time.
Absolutely. And, you just don't realize how you tend to miss that light because literally you don't know when the weather is changing. You don't know if it's,
dark,
if it's day or night.
Right.
Exactly. All of those things. And so something that can be really helpful is going outside for lunch. I have done that myself on my lunch break just to get some sun, just getting in the sun when you can, especially with, our beautiful fall weather. Just taking in some of that natural light, for 30 minutes I find that that's so refreshing.
And if you have coworkers or even on your own, even just a 5 minute, 10-minute movement break, and you may say,
Yes, yes.
I'm not in a place where I can exercise. I mean, we've done it around our fitness center is in a big shopping center, and we've, you know, to get outside, we've walked around that shopping center, and it's not the prettiest walk, but it is functional and it gets you outside, beyond those walls. But whatever it is, sitting outside, taking that 5 minute, 10-minute movement break. And then have you ever used, or do you have any patients that use the specialty type of bulbs? Like a lot of them are called names like Awake and Alert biological LED bulbs. They're using these bulbs that are sort of that blue hued light.
I don't have very many, but I do have a few patients that use those lights. I feel like it's going to be something that's becoming more popular, as we become more informed about how light therapy can be so important for us.
Thinking that could be something in the exam rooms, having like lamps with those
Right?
bulbs. Yeah.
Yes, yes, especially the ones without windows.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you're at work, if you are fortunate and you have a window, that's great. If not, is there a space that's an atrium that has natural skylights? Or is there a place that you can go outdoors? Or is there even just a place that you can be by a window to have that level of connection with the outdoors? And again, all of this seems like really small things, but these are all going to help with mood, with energy, with depression, with anxiety, even like we said earlier, appetite, cravings. And then as you're getting home, thinking, okay, we need to start to do these transitions to bedtime. And there's a lot that can happen between work and home. And there's nothing wrong with watching TV or being on your screens or any of this. It's the thinking and planning for when that transition time needs to start happening before bed. So switching
Yes.
gears a little bit to vitamin D, how often do you get questions about this?
I feel like I get questions about vitamin D all the time, honestly. Whenever people are feeling tired, you know, and sometimes people just want to know, well, what is my vitamin D level? Because I think that we're becoming more aware that we don't get as much sun, as we need to. We wear a lot more layered clothing, and there's a lot of concern, So I'm definitely getting asked about it.
How often do you test people's D? Is that something that's a common thing that you'll do?
So, not necessarily a routine test unless I have a patient with vitamin D deficiency. But if they're exhibiting symptoms, which could be anything from fatigue to depression to joint pains, then I will do a vitamin D test.
So when we look at, okay, who is at risk for vitamin D deficiency? Anyone who's in this whole category that we just talked about. You wake up, you go to work, you leave, it's dark, you're not seeing the sun at all. So people who get very little sun exposure, that's going to put you in that category for at risk for low levels of D. And when we look at the optimal time to get vitamin D, you look at 10 to 15 minutes a day outside. That's at a time when your shadow is shorter than you are. So it's really more direct sunlight, not when you have that real long shadow as the sun's about to set or the sun's just coming up. So sunscreen does block it. So it's sort of a push-pull
Right.
between dermatologists and vitamin
Yes.
D advocates.
Yes. The powers that be go back and forth about when is the best time and then even how much. So you have to be very intentional if you're going to get it naturally, to know that this is when you're not putting your sunscreen on. And I think that's why a lot of people lean towards supplementing
Right.
their vitamin D just to make up for the fact that we're not getting enough naturally.
And when we look at, okay, well, why does it matter? Why is sunlight and therefore vitamin D so essential? Like we've said earlier, it's this whole body wellness, but even things that we don't think about, it's our mood, it's our energy, it's even certain types of cancer, diabetes, hypertension. All of these things can be linked to a deficiency in vitamin D. I feel like over and over and over, every time you're looking at new reports, there's vitamin D deficiency is linked to fill in the blank. There's just so much. And so it's one of those things that can be pretty easily remedied. And so, like you said, if you're seeing some of these types of symptoms, go ahead and test with vitamin D. So who's at risk if you've got low sun exposure, if you have jobs, hobbies that keep you inside, People with darker skin are going to have a higher risk of vitamin D deficiency, and also being overweight puts you at risk. Our body fat stores more of the vitamin D, doesn't release as much into our bloodstream. So someone who is overweight may be at a higher risk. People over 50 can be at a higher risk. So any of those areas, if you fall into that, then it may be something to talk with your doctor about. And so when you check, can you explain kind of the different, like the type of vitamin D that you're measuring specifically for?
So the one that we're measuring for is a 25 hydroxy vitamin D, which is the active form of vitamin D in the body. And what I tell my patients about vitamin D is that it is that supplement it's the vitamin that we don't think about how important it is until things start to go wrong. And because it affects so many things. It can affect the way the body controls blood pressure in the kidney, and it can even increase your risk of type 2 diabetes if you don't have, enough vitamin D levels. So it's very important. The thing that I think I see the most of is changes in mood. People tend to have less anxiety and less depressed mood when we replace their vitamin D. And that's something that I would completely not expect with, something as simple as a vitamin.
When did you start noticing that?
That was pretty early on in my practice. And that's why now, if someone is having those types of concerns with depression and anxiety, that I definitely want to know how their vitamin D level is doing.
That's really interesting. Was that something that was emphasized in medical school, or was it something you sort of put the pieces together later?
Definitely anecdotal. It was not emphasized nearly as much in my training, but there was a serious correlation that I began seeing, without my practice.
Yeah. Which is, I love that you were open to that, receptive to that, and then observing and kind of taking note of this, because it would be really easy to dismiss it or want to prescribe, well, let's try, things for depression or anxiety or this, and kind of go straight to that route. So I love that you were like, let's see what's at the root of this, and is there something that could easily be remedied? That's awesome. Let's talk for a moment about Billy, sponsor of this week's podcast and an Allure Best of Beauty winner. Self-care and routine are more important than ever. So whatever we're using to get ready for the day should leave us feeling amazing. Billy has recreated everyday essentials by delivering premium razors and high-performing body care directly to you. Go to mybilly.com to get their crazy affordable starter kit that includes their award-winning razor, 2 precision 5-blade refill cartridges, and a cult favorite magnetic holder. I love Billy's products, and you will too. They leave our skin feeling so soft. Go to mybilly.com/fueled to get the best razor you'll ever own while also supporting this show. Billy is half the price of other razors plus free shipping always. Just go to mybilly.com/fueled. That's spelled mybillie.com/fueled. mybilly.com/fueled. So when we look at vitamin D, like Dr. Hardy said, it's the 25 hydroxy vitamin D is the type that is checked. That's the active form of vitamin D that levels are checked. There's a little bit of discrepancy of like what is considered like sufficient or good levels of vitamin D. So what are your thoughts on this?
And that is one of the things that makes it difficult, I think, to come up with recommendations for how much to take, is because whenever we try to look it up in journals, there's no recommended daily dose. What we commonly do when someone is very deficient, meaning their level is, below 20, because a normal level would be somewhere from 36, whenever you do the labs, is recommend anywhere from 50,000 units, because it's measured in international units weekly for at least 12 weeks. And then we'll recommend that they take anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 international units daily.
So 50,000 a week would essentially be like 7,000 a day if someone's doing that. Yeah. Which I actually had a message on social media today. I had done a TV segment a couple of weeks ago, and we posted about it on sources of vitamin D, which kind of to a side note on that, people will say, well, how can I get it through my diet? It's almost impossible to get it through your diet. Like when you heard those numbers that Dr. Hardy just said, 1 cup of milk has about 100 units of vitamin D. And you heard these thousands that she's talking about.
Right.
So an ounce of salmon or a cup of fortified milk is 100 units. Cod liver oil is what really is a good source, but how many people are really doing cod liver oil on the daily? But a tablespoon has about 1,300 IUs. So again, supplementing with capsules of vitamin D are typically going to be best. But so we had talked about that the recommended dose is 800 to 1,000, sort of as a baseline if someone's not deficient and they were going to take it just supplementally. Yes. And then you heard the numbers that Dr. Hardy was saying. So 50,000 a week until it stabilizes. Then you said 2,000 to 4,000 daily?
Yes. And that's for deficient individuals. Yes.
And then you would check it and I guess adjust as the levels are coming up.
Correct.
So as we did the TV segment, I had in the notes of the TV segment that most experts would agree, 800 to 1,000. And we talked about kind of food sources, that it's hard to get it through food, so you need supplements. But the supplement that I showed as the example, I had chosen this particular bottle because it worked well for TV. It had vitamin D3 really big on the label. So I had picked that one off the shelf to show as the example. And someone posted on my social and said, you actually showed a product that had 5,000 milligrams. Aren't you concerned about like overdose, basically? And I said, good catch on that. Thanks for the eyes. But, people you heard the levels that Dr. Hardy was saying. And even for most people, it's possible to get too much vitamin D, but it's not likely. So the upper limit for people who are not deficient is 2,000 IUs daily. But recent research is showing that there's a safe upper limit for just anyone, for the most part, could be as much as 10,000 units a day. So we don't need to be fearful, but the best that we would say is don't just go willy-nilly and guessing about it. Because if you do suspect that you're deficient in it, you don't have to guess. Do I take 5,000? Do I take 1,000? Like, you don't have to guess. You can talk with your physician about measuring your levels of D, the 25-hydroxy D, and see exactly and do it with guidance and do it with better insight.
Yeah, that is definitely the best way, because another way that we can check to make sure that you're not taking in too much is to also check how much calcium your body is absorbing too, because vitamin D can affect calcium absorption. So a lot of times if the calcium level is too high, then that may be a sign that we need to back off. There's also parathyroid hormone. And so there are other things that your doctor can use to monitor along with the vitamin D level to coach you on the right dose for you, because it is individual. We'll give these recommendations, but I have some patients that will stay on the 50,000 for much longer just because for some reason for them, it's not coming up. It could be a dietary thing. It could be the way their digestion is. There's so many factors that can affect this. So it really is a case by case basis.
That also, as you're saying that, it's important for people to know or to feel comfortable with sharing with their physician about this. I think sometimes people, they want to talk with their physicians about medications, but maybe they don't bring up supplements, or maybe they're not sure they can or should, or, they don't want to, and, everyone has different opinions on it, or different approaches, I should say. And I've unfortunately had, clients who will say when they talked with their physician about different supplements, they just got shot down. And so then what happens is that patient doesn't want to talk to their physician about it because they feel criticized. And so they just won't mention it. And so I would encourage you to not be an ostrich about it. So if you are taking supplements, let your physician know, because they can help you do it with guidance. And if you feel that this is an approach that you want to take and you have someone who's maybe not open to it, what would you suggest then, Dr. Hardy?
Well, I think too, you have to advocate for yourself as the patient, right? Because our healthcare is a partnership. You know your body, and you know how you're feeling. And just like you're coming to your doctor for expertise, you have the expertise on yourself. And so both of you meet in the middle, and then you come up with a plan that is best for you. And I can't tell you how many times that my patients have educated me on things that I may not have been aware of, new trends or new things that were coming up. I try to stay ahead of things as much as I can, but they'll say, hey, have you heard about this? And I'm like, no, but let me do some research and get back to it. So it's about being open, to what your patient is suggesting, because ultimately, if it helps them to feel better and it's safe and it's effective, why not? What is the harm in taking something like that? So I would say just to continue to advocate for yourself, and you might be surprised at the response that you get from your doctor.
And we'll put a link to you and your contact information also on the episode notes, because I think if someone's listening and says, oh, I've tried and I can't have that kind of a conversation with my physician, but Dr. Hardy sounds amazing, then you can reach out to her, and you can reach out and schedule, because that openness and that willingness to collaborate is just really a beautiful thing. And I'm the same way. Like there's no way we can know everything about the trends of what people are going to come in asking you about medical advice. And for me with nutrition, there's just no way. That just is so rapidly evolving, new products, new books, new things on Netflix people are watching, whatever it is. There's
right.
it's so much. And so I'm right there with you that I learned so much from the questions that people are asking me. And sometimes I'll hear one question and I'll think, well, that seemed kind of strange. Where's that coming from? And then when I hear a version of that again, I'm like, oh, this is catching some steam, I need to really something here. Exactly. Which is probably maybe kind of how the vitamin D awareness started. You see it with one and you're like, well, maybe this is coincidence. And then you see it again and again and you're like, okay, there's, like you said, there's something here. So our takeaway is, I'm not sure how we can lobby to no longer do the time change for daylight savings time. I would love that.
I'm in.
Right. We'll sign whatever petition's going around. And then beyond that, really strategizing to get that sunlight, as simple as it sounds. Shades open. The Al Roker splash of water on the face has nothing to do with light, but it's kind of getting our mindset there. Getting yourself outside before work, before your day starts, if you can, to get some of that morning hour of light there, just to start, again, filling those receptors in our body that are absorbing that light, that are triggering that serotonin production. They're telling us to wake up, to energize, to speed things up. And then as we go through the day, because those cues may not naturally be there, we have to provide them for ourselves of getting the lights down, getting the stimulus down, the artificial lights down, separating from the gadgets, the doodads, as we were saying,
yes.
the electronics. So those are things that sometimes that, there's things that we know are really good for us, but they can be really big steps, or they could be really expensive steps. There's a lot that kind of goes into this big commitment. Nothing that Dr. Hardy and I talked about is a really big commitment, but it just takes that awareness and that thought and changing our patterns just a bit.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about all of these steps. It's just being intentional, and I mean, if all of them at once sound like too much, pick something small, pick one or two things and say, this week, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get outside in the morning hours and I'm going to make sure I wind down at night, and you'll see a huge difference, even with those small changes.
I'd say one of the biggest takeaways that's been a life changer for me is that phone in the other space, preferably the other room, but separating from that at night so that you don't have that stimulus for what you're looking at plus the light. There's just so much. I really appreciate you taking the time with us. This has been fun, and we'll have to think about other topics that you can join me for again.
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
I would love that. All right. Thanks, Dr. Hardy. And I'll put the link for your contact with Ochsner Health too. I think that your approach probably speaks to a lot of people here.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
A tremendous thank you to Dr. Hardy for carving time out of her schedule to spend time with us talking about sunlight and vitamin D. I love that she has seen and experienced through her patients' experiences the benefits of identifying when there's a potential deficiency and then working to correct that deficiency and seeing the benefits. I also really admire her approach of continually learning from her patients. I think that's just an amazing outlook, an amazing approach. I know that her patients love her, so I was really grateful that she could join us. And let us know what you think as you incorporate these strategies and some more light into your life. We always want to hear about it. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.